This is the Humane Labs, one of the most mysterious POIs in San Andreas. Although it is one of the most important places for the GTA 5 action, then most people don't really know much about the lab. Why are there literal monkeys inside the laboratory? And who is really behind the facility producing mass murder chemical weapons? Well, for all of these questions and many more, we finally have the answers in this documentary. For better understanding of why such a laboratory even exists, let's go all the way back to the origin story of the Humane Labs. Interestingly, Humane Labs' roots are originating from the Soviet Union. During the collapse of the Soviet Union in the early 1990s, two Russian men by the names of Maxim Rashkovsky and Tima Popov took the chance and emigrated to the United States via Israeli passports that were issued secretly by Agent ULP and the IAA. For further information about this, you can check out the IAA and FIB video on my channel. But anyway, back to these two Russian men. Firstly, Maxim Rashkovsky, born in St. Petersburg, Russia. There he got 3 doctorate degrees in engineering, genetic studies and also criminology. He is described by our old friend Agent 14 as a vain sociopath, egomaniac and a control freak. Also not much of a people's person. Through his connections from the IAA, he was hired by the US Army to be the head of research in Fort Sankudo in the 1990s. During the same time, he also met a Russian businessman, Tima Popov, in the streets of Los Santos, of whom Maxim Rashkovsky created a pharmaceutical company with. The same company built and controlled the Humane Labs and Research Center in the 90s and 2000s. Popov was in control of the finances, while Rashkovsky was in control of the development of the pharmaceuticals, a 50-50 partnership. The business went well, and both Popov and Rashkovsky made millions and millions of dollars from the research lab. But it all went bad in the late 2000s. From 2001, Rashkovsky had started selling classified information from Fort Sankudo, where he still worked at all this time, to the Russian government. Selling US military secrets is a very big crime, and by 2008, the Federal Investigation Bureau, aka the FIB, noticed it and arrested Rashkovsky for espionage. After the trials in court, Rashkovsky was incarcerated to the Bolingbroke Penitentiary to serve a 35-year sentence. And coming back to the business partnership, Popov had no idea that Rashkovsky was working for the Russian FSB. After Rashkovsky was arrested, no one was leading the work in the Humane Labs, and for that reason, Popov decided to shut down the work of pharmaceutical business and sold the lab to none other than our old friend Merriweather. Merriweather bought the place for a relatively cheap price of $20 million. As we found out in the Merriweather documentary, which you can check out after this video, Merriweather created a whole division for the newly bought Humane Lab and Research Center. Now that Merriweather was in control of the lab, the actions there became extremely illegal. Yet from 2009 to 2013, Merriweather and the IAA had signed a contract for the development of a deadly neurotoxin chemical. The IAA needed a toxic chemical weapon which they could potentially sell to foreign terror groups, and Merriweather was charged to be in control of the development of the chemical. The development of such a chemical would have actually become a reality if it wasn't for the FIB alongside Michael DeSanta stealing the prototype from the lab in 2013. After the raid, it was also clear that Merriweather were using monkeys to test these deadly chemicals on, hence why there were monkeys all over the lab in cages. Anyway, after the catastrophic failures Merriweather had against Trevor, Michael and Franklin in 2013, like letting them steal a military-grade government submarine, letting Trevor destroy a cargo plane carrying weapons, and finally the Humane Labs incident, many government organizations, including the IAA, didn't no longer see Merriweather as a reliable business partner. Therefore, the IAA and other military organizations cut contracts with Merriweather, losing them 70% of their revenue sources. Merriweather cut their divisions, but at first still stayed in the Humane Labs to develop a new neurochemical, but this time not for the IAA or any other government agency. Merriweather's goal was to develop some sort of a chemical and then sell it to a foreign military group themselves without the involvement of the IAA. In 2015, the IAA noticed Merriweather's activity activity in the lab and wanted to get more intel on what exactly Merryweather was developing there. Agent 14's superior, that we now know to have been Mrs. Phoenicia Rackman, assigned the intel gathering heist on Agent 14, who then assigned it on our online character and the associates. At first, our crew had to go and rescue Mr. Rashkovsky from the Bolingbroke penitentiary. Although he was rightfully convicted, the IAA needed schematics of the Humane Labs facility that Rashkovsky was willing to provide in exchange for getting out of the prison and then out of the US. The heist was successful, and after providing the schematics, Rashkovsky fled the country via a plane that our online character got him. Where Rashkovsky fled is unknown, but taking into consideration that he has connections in the Russian FSB agency and is himself part Russian, it is likely he fled back to his motherland. Also, Rashkovsky's paranoid earlier business partner Dima Popov was killed during the heist preparations by our crew to quote-unquote cut off loose ends. After the prison break, it was finally time for the invasion of the Humane Labs. The main task of the heist was to steal information on a USB plug from one of the computers of the Humane Labs to get information about the potential chemicals developed there. The heist was successful, and our crew handed the information USB over to one of the IAA agents, Karen Daniels, the same agent who a few years prior to that was the one interrogating the Azerbaijani man in the IAA headquarters. But let's come back to the Humane Labs. What the IAA did with the information we gathered for them, we really don't have a clue, since it stayed confidential to our online character. But after our raid on the lab, Merryweather also closed off their Humane Labs division, furthermore losing their revenue sources. So we can estimate that the IAA operation turned out to be successful. From 2015 to 2016, the lab stayed basically untouched. There was no new research projects going on, and the research center was basically used as a storage facility for Merryweather. From that time, no one really touched the Humane Labs, since there weren't any chemicals developed, and the weaponry and equipment held there were under strong surveillance, so it was easier to steal equipment from other places. But then in 2017, a crazy lunatic by the name of Avon Hertz stepped into the business. Being recently fired from the IAA and also being good friends with Merryweather CEO Don Percival, Don and Avon decided to create their own partnership, this time against the government. As we all know, by the end of 2017, Avon needed himself a private army for the world takeover via his AI Clifford. The human resources for the army were then provided by Merryweather themselves, but the weaponry was developed by Avon's other company Coil, that alongside cars also made weapons. The production of the weapons for the private army was from early 2017 stationed in Humane Labs itself. This included the production of miniguns, stun guns, armored equipment and railguns. What is interesting about it is that in summer of 2017, Agent 14 ordered our online character to steal a railgun from the Humane Labs for our gun-running bunker business. Agent 14, with his IAA intelligence at the time, thought that the railguns were developed in the Humane Labs by Merryweather themselves and not in partnership with Avon Hertz. That's why 6 months later, in December of 2017, the IAA at first didn't have a clue that Avon Hertz, who firstly acted as our friend, wanted to actually turn on us and take over the United States. So throughout 2017, Humane Labs was used as a production facility for the private military of Avon Hertz. And although Avon's world takeover plans failed, the Humane Lab was revived and was technically still in the hands of Merryweather and Don Percival, who decided to continue using the laboratory. They were largely able to do it because of the money boost that working with Avon Hertz provided for them. From 2018 to 2023, Merryweather had resurrected their own company alongside the Humane Labs. The lab was no longer used as just a storage facility, and new research projects were started regularly. This time, not only chemical weapon research and development projects, but also mechanical weapon and armored equipment development projects were started. The second primary time of Merryweather lasted until once again our online character decided to get involved, this time with our hangar mechanic Charlie. In 2023, our online character and Charlie formed a rivaling private military company for Merryweather called the Los Santos Angels. The LS Angels started directly fighting Merryweather on their operations. Merryweather, losing all these fights, lost the trust of the US government and also the credibility to operate on US soil. That means that legally, right now, there shouldn't be any activity in the area of the Humane labs. But if that really is the case, we can't be certain right now, since Merryweather has connections with almost all government agencies, which just might turn a blind eye for them to continue working in the US. If that really is the case though, we really just have to wait and see. If Merryweather will be working in Vice City and the state of Leonida in a year or so, then we can confidently say that they are most likely also still operating the Humane Labs and Research Center. Anyway, that is it for this video. If you want more information about the other organizations and POIs mentioned here, make sure to check out my other documentaries, and see you guys in the next video.